fans and cheer. In this podcast palace, we've got the atmosphere. Whoa, Bobo and Cramer, yeah, the stand of the lost, taking on the world, and they're never gonna stop with that New York grit, rising to the top. Get loud. Fluid and sending up, feel electric sound. With every single word, you're never gonna frown. From the midline giants to the Madison Square, Bobo and Cramer, yeah, this man been getting it out. Whoa, Bobo and Cramer, yeah, the stand up to loud, taking on the world, and they're never gonna stop with that New York grit. They're rising to the top. Get loud. Yeah, the best in the house is where the legends play. Bobo and Cramer leading the way. Raise your glasses high, shout it out loud. And the best in the house, we're rocking the town. And the best in the house, we're rocking the town. And the best in the house, we're rocking the town. And the best in the house, we're rocking the town.
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back once again to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Kramer, joined by my co-host, the great Daniel Bobo Curlin. And Dan, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing okay, but I had a friggin' Tom Wilson. You know who else can't stand Tom Wilson? My mom.
Well, all right. That's a hell of a way to kick off the show tonight. I love it. I love the energy right out of the gate. There we go. Unfortunately, as me and Dan are recording this late on Wednesday night, the Rangers are just coming off a very tough overtime loss, as Dan just explained, at the hands of Tom Wilson and the Washington Capitals. Rangers end up losing this game 3-2 in overtime. A game that, let's be honest, they led throughout most of the game. Obviously, the Capitals ended up scoring the first goal, but the Rangers rebounded after that. They ended up tying it late. They took a 2-1 lead. Late in the first period, they tied it, and they ended up taking a 2-1 lead. I mean, it felt like they had this game going into the third period, Dan, and to let it slip through their fingers is just one of those losses that can really hurt your playoff chances, even though you do have to give them credit. They did get a point at it tonight against the best team in the East.
Yeah, at least they got a point out of it, but still, that loss just stings big time, and they just had to. They had to end up in a penalty box in the third period that time. Penalty cost us.
Yeah, the penalty ended up costing the Rangers, and then the sloppy play at the end of overtime too, where they ended up giving up the 2-on-1, and that sealed their fate as Tom Wilson ended up coming down, having the odd man rush, and putting it in on a great pass, and to set up the goal that Igor essentially had no chance on the deflection. So, tough loss, but, with the amount of upheaval the Rangers have gone through lately, it's a miracle, too, if you think about it. Over the last, 3 games now, the 2 shutouts over the weekend of the Nashville Predators on Saturday and the Islanders on Tuesday, on Monday, that, that really set the Rangers up in a good way for this playoff run. Even though, that loss on Friday to Toronto looked like the Rangers had pretty much ended their season. It's funny how things have changed so much because these teams in the East are right on top of each other. It really is crazy when you look at how close things are. The Rangers started tonight. They started tonight tied for the second wild card spot, 1 point ahead of the Ottawa Senators. The Ottawa Senators ended up winning tonight, so they jumped 1 point ahead of the Rangers. The Rangers did pick up 1 point to still stay in striking distance there, but the Rangers are now currently 1 point behind the Ottawa Senators. So it's just crazy how close this thing is. And if the Rangers had won tonight, they would have been tied for the number one spot in the in the wild card as well. So, you go from almost being in the number one spot to still being on the outside looking in. That's how close it is.
Yeah, this is gonna go down to the end of the season. It's gonna be nerve wracking. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah, nerve-wracking is definitely the word, and things still haven't stopped changing for the Rangers yet too. We were talking about some of the upheaval, and right now we're still coming off. This is now game number 3 tonight, after this Ryan Lindgren trade. And it's a shame to see a guy like Ryan Lindgren go. Let's not forget Ryan Lindgren came back all the way from the Rick Nash trade in 2018, where the Rangers ended up shipping Rick Nash to the Boston Bruins. They got back Ryan Lindgren, a few other players as well, and but Ryan Lindgren stood out far and above. We as Rangers fans have to collectively salute and give credit to Ryan Lindgren. He deserves nothing but respect from Rangers fans. It's been said by people online that Ryan Lindgren donated his body to the New York Rangers, and in a lot of ways he did. This guy laid it on the line every single night for the Rangers for the better part of the last 5 or 6 years, and we are lucky to have had him team up with Adam Fox for most of his career. And it's unfortunate that now it's gotten to the point where maybe a lot of that physical load has taken its toll on Lindgren's body, and he's maybe come back down to earth a little bit. But we got to give the guy credit, right, Dan?
Yeah, we have to give credit and credit to the Rangers for getting something out of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you say something out of it too, but right now, this trade really comes off like a steal for the Rangers in a lot of way. I end up kind of glossing over the two players they got on there, Yuso Parisian and defenseman Calvin DeHaan. That's only because DeHaan is a really good vet, but he's not going to be here after this year. He's just kind of a placeholder and a guy that the Rangers are kind of hoping his style of play rubs off on some of their young kids because he really is a good defensive defenseman. So adding him to the Rangers blue line there is not a bad decision at all, or a bad option to play at all either. Yusuf Parisian, a 24-year-old forward, doesn't really have much offensive talent, so who really knows what his upside is at this point? He's kind of like a wild card thrown in there. But the big thing is that for two players that you were going to lose at the end of the year anyway, you end up getting a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick in this year's draft that you could do anything you want. The Rangers could go out there and select two young players in the draft to just fill their prospect cupboards up with, or they could turn around and flip either of these picks for a player between now and the deadline on Friday or in the offseason. So a lot of options on the table when you acquire assets like these, right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. And I just have a feeling that the decision on these draft picks will be made during the offseason, I feel like.
Yeah. I think you're probably right because I don't see the Rangers going out there and making any kind of big major move. I know our buddy Rod Duguay, who I'm a big fan of Rod Duguay, loved him. Obviously, he played a little bit before my time, but always respected him as an analyst and everything growing up. I see him on Twitter now. I really respect his hockey acumen, but he has really been all over the Rangers for this trade, for better or worse. He thinks that they, you know, aren't necessarily trying to win now with this trade. And I don't know about that. I don't know if I agree fully with that. And he, by the way, he also thinks that a bigger deal is coming down the line before Friday's deadline with all the cap space the Rangers have. I don't know if that's the case either. But, there's something to be said about a team that can trade two players like this that you were going to lose, get assets back, and then you can turn around and the Rangers have given much more ice time to guys like Brennan Othman and Brett Berard, who are going to be on this team in the future. So, I think you can kind of balance it without having to, like give up for the rest of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's what they did here in this trade. And we'll
Yeah, I
see
mean,
and we'll see in the coming weeks how it how that see how our see how our season turns out uh, following that trade.
yeah, and it's all going to depend what happens. Everybody is going to take Chris Drury to task if the Rangers end up missing the playoffs because of this kind of decision. But you know what? I think we all see that this this team, sure, if they get in the playoffs, could be a dangerous team, no doubt about that. But this season has become more than just about the 2025 season for the New York Rangers this year. You know what I mean, Dan? This season has become a lot of just setting the tone and trying to rebuild on the fly, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like whatever happens this year, I feel like there's going to be a real big year next year. I feel like for the Rangers, my gut feeling says that there's going to be a really big year next year.
Yeah, I think you're right too. And one of the names right now that might be in that mix next year or might not is Chris Kreider. Dan, I hear his name swirling in a lot of you know a lot of people that are in the know are saying that the Rangers want to move on from Chris Kreider. It might not be by Friday's deadline, but I don't know if he's going to be in the plans for the New York Rangers next year, Dan. I don't know if I agree with that either. I like Chris Kreider, his presence being here. I mean, you were talking about his debut the other day in the 2012 playoffs, and not to mention his 50-goal season from a couple of years ago, and the amount of power play goals he scored in the Rangers. He is, one of the biggest offensive forces in New York Rangers history, believe it or not, over his tenure. He's creeped into the top 5 in all-time goals for this organization, which is impressive feat in itself. So, what would you think about the prospects of potentially moving on from him, Dan?
I'm not really a fan of it. I'm really hoping that they keep him they keep him because I feel like this guy is just an integral part of this team, and I feel like just has that veteran presence on this team, especially going into next year. You want that guy that's been here, that's been through the ropes.
Yeah, man,
And
he's a New York Ranger through and through, right?
yeah, and I just feel like you kind of need this. It's the kind of player you kind of need, especially when you're going to have next year. You're going to have a lot of new guys, and you're going to have a
Yeah.
lot of young players here next year.
Yeah, and the fact is too that while you are going to have a bunch of young players on this team, you're 100% right about that, Dan. The core of this team is in its mid 30s. Really, right? I mean, look at JT Miller. He's 32 years old. Look at Artemi Panarin. He's going to be 34 next year. Look at Mika Zibanejad. He's in his early 30s. When you look around this team and you see all the guys that the Rangers are going to be counting on still next season, these guys are in their 30s. So it's a win now team. It's still going to have a lot of young pieces to it, but this is a win now team for the New York Rangers. We can't fool ourselves into thinking that, oh, this team is so young still. This isn't the Rangers team from 4 years ago where, we could only dream of how good these guys are going to be in a couple of years. Now, it's here, and the Rangers have to win now.
Yeah, exactly. I feel it's a win now. They're in a 2 year window to win this thing this year or next year, and
Yeah,
they
well,
and they
I mean,
and I
yeah.
feel like next offseason they're gonna have to make a big move next year to improve this team.
Well, the name that I keep hearing right now on the free agency front is Mika Rantanen, who's the guy that me and you were talking about a couple of months ago in November when the Colorado Avalanche traded him to the Carolina Hurricanes. So that's a guy I hear the Rangers are willing to move heaven and earth to acquire. And that would be a very big addition to this team if the Rangers could pull that off.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to see him on our team. He would be such a big deal getting him.
Oh yeah, and could you imagine at some point having, I don't know who you're going to put in the center. I guess if he comes back to life, Mika Zibanejad, but it also could be JT Miller or even Trocheck. If you look at that top line, Panarin, I believe next year is on the last year of his deal. So if you have Panarin and Miko for that 1 year, And I'm not saying that it's going to be the end of Panarin after his contract is over, but I'm saying as for the two big money guys there on the top line for 1 year, that'd be pretty solid to have those guys there, right?
Yeah, that would just be something else. Just getting to see that, I would be. Oh, that would be just one heck of a team.
Exactly, man. And right now, as we said earlier, Rangers now 1 point behind the Ottawa Senators for the final wild card spot. And as luck would have it, the next time the New York Rangers will be taking the ice is Saturday afternoon at the Ottawa Senators, and that'll be following the trade deadline. So any more tweaks the Rangers are going to be making, like the eventual trade of Riley Smith, who hasn't suited up for the last 3 games, but is bound for a playoff contender. Uh, you know, probably one with a much more solidified spot than the New York Rangers have currently. And, it's going to be interesting to see what they can get for him if they're going to have to retain any salary. But the Rangers have plenty of cap room, Dan. So if you're asking me, retain as much salary as you get to get the best draft pick back possible for Riley Smith, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what you need to do.
Yeah,
And
no
I
doubt about it.
expect that.
Yeah, I
I
expect them to
expect
do
that.
that. Yeah. Yeah, Drury's smart. He knows how to use that space. And plus, no matter what the Rangers do, for the most part, as we were saying on our Patreon show the other day too, unless the Rangers are going to go out there and acquire Connor McDavid at the trade deadline, which I don't think that's going to be happening, then the Rangers are going to be not using up all that cap space they have. So you might as well sell off a little bit of it for draft picks. No doubt about that. So real interesting with the Rangers there. Let's take a look now, Dan, at the Rangers Garden, brothers over there in arms. The New York Knicks right now, as the Knicks coming off a tough loss last night at the Garden of the Golden State Warriors, Dan. I mean, 114-102. We all know that the Warriors, they're not the Warriors from a couple of years ago, but they're still a very good team. And it's a tough loss because Golden State right now 30-28 after that win, at home, and we're going to talk about it in a second. It's before a big West Coast swing, so it really would have been nice to get that victory under your belt going out west.
Yeah, that would have been a really nice win. I was watching that game and I just felt like we just fell. I feel like that fourth quarter, we just ran out of steam that fourth quarter, and we cannot do that. Run out of steam in the fourth quarter if we're gonna really make a run at this whole thing in the playoffs.
Yeah, and we've mentioned the Knicks struggling with top teams. Now, Golden State would not qualify as a top team this year, but the fact remains that the Knicks' record against the 3 top teams they faced this year, Oklahoma City, Cleveland, and the Boston Celtics, is 0-7. So the Knicks really have to figure that out. However, when it's come to clutch situations and everything, this year the Knicks have been one of the best teams in basketball. Actually, Jalen Brunson leads the league in most clutch points this year. And the Knicks, I'm not sure if last night's game counted as one of those clutch games because it ended up being a 12-point game anyway, so it wasn't really close at the end. But as for games that came down to basically a coin flip at the end of the game, the Knicks had won 10 straight games like that and had the best record in the NBA at 16-7. So really interesting to see how good the Knicks have been under pressure this year, even if they haven't really been able to, relay that into success against some of the better teams in the league.
Yeah, exactly. I just feel the Knicks need to need to do 2 things. One, find a way to not lose steam in the fourth quarter. Number 2, avoid having to play in that play-in tournament.
Yeah, that's a big thing. And right now, it's funny you mentioned that, Dan. Right now, the Knicks, who, as I mentioned before, 40-21, they're third in the East. So they are in pretty good shape when it comes to avoiding the play-in tournament at this point, which you have to make sure you finish in the top 6 to avoid the play-in tournament. Knicks looking pretty good on that front right now. And as we can see in the Knicks' own division, they're 3 games behind the Boston Celtics. So look, as bad as it's been against Boston too, the Knicks only are 3 behind, and obviously it looks like Cleveland with their crazy season that they've been having. Knicks are 11 games behind that, so kind of a pipe dream to think the Knicks are going to get the 1 seed after finishing second last year. But second is still in play. And if anything, the Knicks have a pretty good hold on the number 3 seed right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I just have a feeling and there's going to be some big moments for the Knicks in the playoffs. Some big moments. I feel like if they can figure out a way to still keep pace in the fourth quarter of games, they are due for some big, very big moments in the playoffs.
Yeah, and they've had big moments over the last couple of years. They've, from a couple of years ago, if you remember when the Knicks made the playoffs against the Atlanta Hawks and lost that first round series, it had been the first time in so long that a Knicks team had made the playoffs. And they've progressed since then. They've got better. They've added better players since then. And now making the playoffs with the New York Knicks is kind of an expected thing, right, Dan? And, it seems like this culture has progressed to the point where I trust this team in the playoffs. You know what I mean? This isn't a novelty anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like now there's only one way to go, and that's to somehow move up to being a championship contender. That's
Which
the
they
only way
definitely are. And they're in that realm right now, right?
Yeah, that's what they need to do, and hopefully this time we actually seal the deal because I went through this in the '90s. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you were too young to really feel the full effects of it. But man, that was such a tough loss after tough loss to the freaking Bulls. So many times
Yeah,
I
man.
said I just badly would want to see the Knicks seal a deal this time when they've made this multi-year run of making the playoffs. I want to see this multi-year run of making playoffs a championship out of it. For once, I want to. Well, I can't really say go to Modell's to get championship gear. I have to maybe buy it online or hope or find a store, or maybe even Dick's Sporting Goods. Like you might have to be a middle person at Dick's Sporting Goods to buy that stuff because they have more locations in Long Island than they do in the city. Dick's, unlike Modell's, which have locations everywhere. They don't really have many Dicks in Queens, I think. So you might have to be my middleman for that to make sure I get that stuff on that shirt in time for the parade.
Yeah, man. And I mean, the Knicks are in it. That's a possibility with this team now. As you mentioned, the Knicks coming so close in the '90s, and they really haven't been that close since then. What the last time the Knicks were even in the Eastern Conference Final was, I think, either 2000 or 2001. It's been a long time since the Knicks have even been, in that Final Four stage right now. As we're entering March Madness, might as well throw a Final Four reference out there. And it's been a long time, Dan. And I think that right now, looking at this team, even though I still think that this Knicks team has depth issues, I think they still need to, in the offseason, add to this bench and figure out a way to make this team longer because, one of the main reasons I think the Knicks lost last night was because Karl Anthony Towns, who it's been to a variety of injuries this year, he's missed some time. Last night was due to some personal reasons the Knicks didn't specify. But, you notice when he's not in the lineup, things change drastically for the Knicks. And it wasn't like that last year because obviously they didn't have a player like him. It was Mitchell Robinson and, Dante DiVincenzo and everything like that. But this team seems a little bit more thinner than last year. When they don't have their big guy Karl Anthony Towns out there.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little thin, but yeah, hopefully he'll be back soon. Hopefully he'll be back soon. I understand there's some kind of personal reasons of stuff he's going through, but hopefully he'll be back soon and he'll be able to get back on track and keep in pace to win this.
Yeah, they said it was only going to be the one game, so they expect him to be back too. But the point is that if anything happens to him in the playoffs or Brunson, too, because I'm focusing more on missing Karl Anthony Towns because he is the guy that's missed a lot of time this year. But Brunson too. Let's say something happens to Brunson. Let's say he breaks a finger and has to miss 2 weeks in the playoffs. What are the Knicks going to do? They don't have any fallback options that they could look to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. So that's hopefully that doesn't happen, because it's getting me so nervous to the point that even if we win the whole thing, I'm just gonna it's gonna be as I've seen sometimes when teams win a championship, and sometimes I never know how I'm gonna react. Could be one of those fainting reactions, like, did the Knicks just win an NBA final? That it would be that kind of thing, and it'd be me hugging, and I'd probably be hugging you like a maniac. Probably Dave. I mean, Dave would be celebrating like a maniac. If Dave, I mean, I'll probably be on FaceTime with him, or if he's in the same bar watching with us, whatever. Like, I just know that'd be freaking one crazy celebration.
Yeah, man. And if we're going to get to see a celebration like that, though, the Knicks are going to have to get through this upcoming trip unscathed, because this is going to be a tough one, man. And, that's why it was imperative to try to get that win last night. Okay, didn't work out. Now, Thursday night at Los Angeles Lakers, things are kicking off. Knicks are going to get a taste. And let's not forget that Knicks lost a couple of weeks ago to the Lakers the night they made the trade for Luka. Luka's going to be in the lineup on Thursday, which he wasn't, obviously, that night the last time these two teams met at the Garden. So, you're going to have to go through a very tough Lakers team. You're going to have to go through the Los Angeles Clippers. Right after that, the Sacramento Kings, Portland Trail Blazers, and then once again, the Knicks are going to be seeing this Golden State Warriors team this time out west. So that is like a murderer's row of teams to go through right now.
Yeah, exactly. And the crazy part is I mean, as my lone relative in SoCal is going to be at the two games in LA, and the 2 games in LA. He's a Knicks fan, so he'll be there.
Yeah. Okay. So we get the Knicks fans travel well. Obviously, us New Yorkers always follow our teams pretty closely. So shout out to the person that that's going to be attending the game. And man, it's going to be a big show out there, especially that one we're talking about on Thursday night between the Lakers and the Knicks. Real interesting to see Luka with that, and obviously LeBron's still playing. Maybe not at the top of his game, but still a very dangerous player and a big time contributor. So it's going to be put up or shut up time for the Knicks right now. And if they come off this, this extended road trip still in a prime position here in the East, then we got nothing to worry about. This is going to be the testing grounds. All right, speaking of that, Dan, let's keep things rolling along here. I want to get to some playoff baseball before we get out of here. As not playoff baseball, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Spring training baseball. As right now, we got a lot of things going on in Port St. Lucie, but the Mets did have a off day today. They come back and play the Astros tomorrow at Port St. Lucie. But the big news of the day, though, Dan, is that Jose Iglesias signed with the San Diego Padres, and that takes one more option off the table for the Mets. Obviously, Jose Madrigal, who the Mets signed to be a potential roster filler in the spot of Jose Iglesias. He ends up hurting his shoulder. He's out for the year now. He's not even an option. And now the Mets don't even have this fallback option. I gotta say though, he did get his money. He ended up getting about $4 million, and it's going to be $5 million if he makes the team. And hey, shout out to Jose Iglesias. I'll always have respect for what he did for the Mets last year, hitting .337 in that part-time role. So shout out to him. I wish him nothing but the best, and it's unfortunate that the Mets couldn't work things out with him.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's how it goes with baseball. But good luck to him. Gonna miss him, but it just fortunately worked that way, and we didn't really have. I feel like maybe in reality we didn't have a room for him, because there was just too many players that could fit that role on this team. I feel like, and rightfully so. I think we'll be fine in that department. I feel like Luis Acuna is going to play a big factor this season. I feel like could have a breakout year this year.
Well, yeah, and there's plenty of players that are going to be able to jump up and grab that spot. And I think, look, David Stern said just a couple of weeks ago when he was talking to the media that it's, it's about like obviously being smart with your money. You don't want to just throw the money to Jose Iglesias, but also it's about giving your young players a chance to jump up and grab that opportunity. Just like what happened with Mark Vientos last year. Everybody thought that Vientos should make the team out of camp. He actually ends up not making it right after the Mets signed JD Martinez, but he fought his way on, and the Mets couldn't deny him. And that's what you want to do with these guys too. You want to give your young players, like you mentioned, Acuna. Jet Williams is going to be in the mix this year for that. Brett Beatty is going to be in the mix. He's been playing the other infield positions too to make himself more versatile for that type of role. And obviously you've got a guy like Ronnie Mauricio coming back as well. So there's plenty of options for the Mets to turn to. So I agree with you. As much as we might have good feelings about Jose Iglesias, it was time to move on.
Yeah, exactly. I just feel like there's gonna. I feel like that's gonna be the direction that's gonna happen. We might see Acuna show up a lot of splitting time with McNeil at second base. I feel like is what we're likely to see, and maybe probably a mix of McNeil in the outfield. Probably is going to be likely the case. I feel like Beatty could be DHing on and off with Winker.
Wait, what you think Beatty and Winker
Yeah,
as the
yeah,
DH?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's not a bad call because Beatty's going to get time all over the place. Winker and Marte are basically going to be splitting DH duties right now. But Marte, who even knows what the heck is going on with him? That's why the Mets went out and made that trade for Alex Canalero, or how do you say his name? Canalero, I think, from the Cubs. That kid's in camp now too. He's a 24-year-old that has pretty decent upside for the offense. So I think the Mets brought him as a safety net just in case. But you're right too, no doubt about it. Brett Beatty could jump up and grab a lot of that DH time too. If he proves he can hit at this level consistently.
Yeah. I just feel like they're gonna find a way to get him in the game.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. That I could definitely see that, no doubt about it. So, hey, but one other thing too, Dan, too, as we talk about guys that are going to be leaving, we got news that former Met Jose Quintana has signed with the Milwaukee Brewers, so he's also not an option. I think Met fans are a little bit more split on this because I think we might be a little bit more happy about our offensive perspective as opposed to the pitching. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this one kind of like really, because I feel like this one we needed the pitching. I feel like we had to go after the pitching, and maybe this one we shouldn't have overlooked. I feel like this one we should have not overlooked.
Yeah, exactly, man. And because basically, it was look at the end of this rotation now. Now we know Sean Manaea is going to start on the IL most likely. Obviously, we don't know when we're ever going to see Frankie Montas. So it would have made a lot of Met fans feel much better about this situation had the Mets gone out and spent Milwaukee. People were saying that Quintana was going to sign for between 10 and 15 million. He ended up signing for $4.25 million. So the Mets could have had him for probably $4 million. So it's you think to yourself, geez, that might have been a good guy to turn to.
Yeah, exactly. I feel this is one we should have went after, but only time will tell, and we gotta hope, keep our fingers crossed that that Sean Mania returns soon, and of course, hopefully Singa. And so far, it looks on track to come back well. I feel like he's gonna have a pretty decent season. I feel like he's gonna have a comeback that's gonna really play, that's gonna have a big positive impact on this team. I feel like with Singa, and then
Well, yeah,
another one, and one that I feel is a big wild card that I'm a little nervous about is McGill on this rotation again.
I don't want to see McGill on this rotation. It just pisses me off that this guy keeps ending up in the Mets rotation. He's not the guy that we thought he was a couple of years ago when he was filling in for Jacob deGrom, and I'm just sick of seeing him at the major league level, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm just sick of it too. I'm just hoping against hope that this guy pulls a Luis Severino and surpasses and by that I mean surpass my expectations like last year.
Yeah, man. But the guy that's funny that you mentioned earlier that we're really going to be counting on to fill in most of those Severino numbers the Mets got last year is Kodai Senga, who, as you mentioned, is coming back. And, he won Rookie of the Year in 2023. So we know what Senga could do at this level. He had an ERA under 3. This is a
Actually,
guy that,
correction, he didn't win Rookie of the Year that year.
yeah, he did.
No, I don't think he did. Hold on, let me look that up.
I'm pretty sure he did.
I don't remember him then. I would have known he did. 2000.
Well, maybe he didn't, but either way, the Mets, getting this guy. Let's see, maybe. Oh no, yeah, you're right. Dan, he finished second in Rookie of the Year voting to Corbin Carroll. That's what it was from the Arizona Diamondbacks. So my mistake. Good calling me out on there. I don't know why I
Yeah,
thought he was Rookie of the Year, but either
yeah,
way, Kodai Senga, we know the value that this guy provides. Whether he was the Rookie of the Year or the runner-up, he was a hell of a contributor to the Mets in 2023. And if the Mets could get anything like that from him out of this season, that just does astronomical, to what the Mets can add to this rotation, as I just botched that
yeah,
astronomical.
yeah. Exactly. And I'm hoping I'm rooting for this guy to pull it off because I just have a feeling he's gonna. It's gonna be he's gonna have a monster year. That's pitching we did not see last year on this team.
Yeah,
Which,
yeah, that's true. So it'd be nice to get that back. Have Senga contribute at the levels that we're used to seeing him contribute to, and hey, that's gonna uh, just really put the Mets in a much better position because their depth at starting rotation, as we know, is scary right now at this point, and not in a good way.
yeah, exactly. And the other thing I feel the Mets really need to do and really need to understand that they have too many players in the minors, a logjam at shortstop and catcher. David Stearns needs to really get to terms with this, and he has too many players at this that are not really. There's not enough room for these. There's more than we have room for, realistically, that we could easily part with this for something we need like pitching.
This is true. This is
And I feel
true.
like at the trade deadline, if that opportunity arises, they need to be willing to to part ways with one of their shortstop or catching prospects.
We could definitely see that, no doubt about it. As it's been discussed by us here and by
And
many
this
other
is
publications too. Yeah,
especially if you see a pitcher that will still be under contract.
yeah. Well, that's why David Stearns hasn't done it yet because one of the only guys that they've been talking about is Dylan Cease, who's on the walk year of his deal. Now, another guy that has been mentioned by fans, but I haven't heard anything concrete by the actual teams or people involved, is the Seattle Mariners' Luis Castillo. Now, obviously, here on March 5th, I don't think that's going to be much of an option anymore. But if in July or late June, depending on when the season dictates it, if the Mariners are not in it anymore, I could see them having an appetite for moving on from him. So it'll be real interesting to see how their season plays out, because a guy like that would be a big addition for the Mets too. And I definitely think, much like many years we expect the Rangers to be in big for the big, name guys at the trade deadline. The Mets this year especially are going to be in it for the big name. We really haven't seen that in the Steve Cohen era, probably since they went all in to get Javi Baez back in the day. And boy, the Mets got the last good couple of months out of Javi Baez there, because he's been a disaster ever since then. But that's the last time the Mets went big for the big name fish at the trade deadline. Ever since then, they traded away a couple of big names at the deadline in 23. They really added part-time pieces in 22 and 24. So really interesting to see the big name pitcher that the Mets are definitely going to be going after in July this year.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like the Mets really saw it this year during the playoff run. That is going to be the big X factor, is getting that pitcher in that trade, in the trade deadline, because that's going to be the thing that will carry us over the hump against some tough opponents, specifically in the NL come playoff time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So definitely a lot of different ways for the Mets to go. And lastly, we're gonna check in on the Yankees. Then before we get out of here, I wanted to mention, obviously the Yankees and the Mets have ran into their fair share of injuries so far in spring. Luckily for the Yankees, their big names in the rotation have avoided that, but a couple of their bats are a little banged up. DJ LeMahieu being one of them, but obviously the big name is Giancarlo Stanton. He's looking to get PRP injections to help his rehab. Yankees looking like they don't expect him to be ready for opening day. So, it's going to be at least a couple of weeks after that. And man, this is just so unfortunate. It's the par for the course and the story of Giancarlo Stanton's life as a New York Yankee. The kid just can't stay healthy. And I call him a kid. He's in his 30s now. But it's just a shame, because you think if this guy could stay healthy, Dan, he's got 400 plus home runs now. He'd be in the 500s if he could stay healthy.
Yeah, I just feel like if he could stay healthy, he could be putting up some big numbers for the Yankees, and it's really gonna play a big factor this year, is how much will they be able to get out of Giancarlo Stanton this year, and if he can come back, and if he can come back to form, because he seems to be having too many injuries, and that's always a question mark when you've had that many injuries, especially if you get injuries in the same similar injury.
Yeah, and man, the last couple of years he's played 110, 101, and 114 games in 22, 23, and 24. This is after he played 139 and 21, and he hit 31 home runs and drove in. He hit 35 home runs, drove in 97 runs. That was his last full season. But in 110 games in 22, he still hit 31 home runs and drove in 78 RBIs. Then in 23 and only 101 games, he still slugged 24 home runs and drove in 60. And then last year in 114, he hit 27 and 72. So, the thing is, okay, maybe the Yankees aren't going to get 150 games out of Giancarlo Stanton anymore. But if they can play him, and slow play it and milk 120 games out of him, 110 games out of him in the regular season, and keep him healthy for the playoffs where he kills it anyway, that's the route the Yankees have to go.
Yeah, exactly. And they gotta hope he's able to be up to that same level of play once he comes back from those injuries, because these injuries are going to be leave a big question mark on him and what effect it's going to have on him.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Dan. And right now, Giancarlo too has 429 home runs. So this guy, he's still 34. He'll be 35 years old this year. He's still got plenty of time left on that contract if he wants to play as long as he wants to. And I think Giancarlo, what do you think right now, Dan? Do you think that Giancarlo Stanton is going to be healthy enough to hit his 500th home run eventually? or do you think his body breaks down before then?
I think it's 50-50 that's going to happen. What I do have to credit is he could potentially be. I feel like in this era, this is one of those guys that's going to be surefire Hall of Fame in this era.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right. I think even if he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, Giancarlo, with his ability to just slug the ball, and he's already got 400 plus home runs, I think he'll be a Hall of Famer too, especially if he ends up hitting, 500. Because let's not forget, this isn't the era, where we have the Jose Cansecos who, had 470 home runs, never made the, yeah, and obviously he had the allegations and everything too, but even Carlos Delgado ended up hitting 450 home runs, and he never got anywhere close to the Hall of Fame. So it'll be interesting to see how people look back at Giancarlo, and I agree with you. I think it's going to be favorably.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's going to be favorable because it says I have a feeling that's going to happen. That's going to happen eventually down the line.
I can see that.
And of course, the whatever happens the rest of his career, injury wise, will determine his legacy with the Yankees.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And if he ever, the other big thing will be, even if he can't ever straighten out his injury history, if he ever wins a ring, because no doubt about it, even if he doesn't win a ring, he's going to go down as one of the better Yankee playoff performers of all time, especially when it comes down to the home runs. So you got to give Giancarlo all the credit in the world for that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he's on pace to potentially earn a monument. At least, at the very least, he'll have that in his career.
Yeah, I don't think it's a crazy thing to say, especially the fact that he's played in the World Series as a Yankee now. One other last thing on the Yankees before we wrap things out here, Dan, is Yankees prospect Spencer Jones has really been impressing in camp. Former first-round pick, I believe, from 2022, center fielder who got as far as Double-A last year, but he's been hammering the ball in camp right now, man. And I'm telling you, he might not make the Yankees out of camp because, making the jump from Double-A is going to be tough. He's going to spend the majority of his year in Triple-A. But I'm saying at some point this year, I think we see this kid Daniel Jones at the major league level.
Spencer Jones. Yeah, I feel like this guy could be called up in May if he plays up to par with where he's expected. I feel like I don't expect him to be in AAA too long.
Yeah, especially if he hits the way he's been hitting so far. And when I first was looking at this kid, I was impressed. I had no idea who he was. Who he was. He could have been a DFA or something like that just popped on the Yankees roster as an invitee. But this kid is a former first round pick. He's got that pedigree. The Yankees have a lot of reasons to give this kid every chance, and I agree with you. I think we could see him at the major league level this year sooner rather than later. So hope for the Yankees' sake that Spencer Jones keeps tearing it up here in spring. And Dan, I think that's just about going to do it for us today on this edition of Best Seat in the House podcast. Before we get out of here, do you have anything like to plug for yourself?
Sure, my Twitter account, Bobo103NYC, Instagram, Bobo718DK. Also subscribe to our Best Seat in the House Patreon. Get access to our Patreon exclusive shows, Trackside Minute, my YouTube 2 weeks early access to my YouTube videos, all that good stuff. So definitely subscribe to our Patreon. Plus, our Patreon supports the show. So definitely do all that.
That's right. Thanks, everybody, so much for hanging out with us here for another edition of Best Seat in the House podcast. For my co-host, the great Daniel Bobo Curlin, I'm Rob Kramer. This is the Best Seat in the House podcast, everybody. And we'll catch you next week. Have a great weekend.
Push the button, Frank.